People know authenticity when they see it, and that's really what we're trying to hone in on. I mean, how many iterations of branding and strategies have we gone through with diamonds that didn't work? I see that tennis bracelets, diamond Rivieras, things like that are through the roof. As far as sales goes, I'm having big increases. We dabbled in lab grown. We started in 2018. Really, the idea is to turn other countries towards a model like Botswana, at least to have some of that success. When you have a brand that has a suggested retail, you just take the price increase and move on.
Hello and welcome to the Rapaport Diamond Podcast. Our guest on this episode is Sean Dunn, Vice President at Dunn Jewelers. The company has one store in Lighthouse Point, Florida. We spoke about why the higher-end independent US jewelers like Dunn are outperforming the major retailers, what types of jewelry are in fashion, and why the company dipped its toes into lab-grown diamonds, which now constitutes just 1% of its business. We also had a long and detailed discussion about diamond provenance and what consumers want, touching on blockchain technology, the De Beers Origin program, and the connection between lab-grown diamonds and dog bites. As has become tradition, I should point out that we recorded this on September the 9th, so some of the tariff news might have changed. Welcome, Sean, to the podcast. I'm keen to hear about Dunn Jewelers and your other insights on the market. Maybe you could start by telling us a little bit about what is Dunn. I know you are based in Lighthouse Point, Florida. How did it come to be, and how did you get into the family business?
Well, it came to be because of my parents. They were ex-IBMers. My mom came over from Italy when she was 13 years old. My dad from Massachusetts, they joined IBM, in their 20s. And it was a great foundation for them. But my dad didn't want to be in corporate America because he felt that, one bad manager kind of limits your upside mobility. And he just decided to go out on his own. And my mom was a willing partner. And that's how they started in the business, with $10,000 worth of savings. And my mom went first. My dad stayed at IBM to keep the money flowing in. And that's how they started, in a little house in Hanover, Massachusetts.
It's the one store in Lighthouse Point, right?
Yes, we moved down to Lighthouse Point in the late 70s. And my dad was flying back and forth to Massachusetts, running the store up there. My mom was doing by appointment only down here. And then in the mid 80s, we found a freestanding building on a pretty busy highway here. And that is now where I'm sitting today, currently at about 13,000 square feet. We just completed a big addition.
So what's your business model? Who's your clientele and what's your business model?
Our business model is basically, high-end independent, full-service jeweler. We are deeply rooted in the community, and we focus mainly on just being the jeweler that doesn't exist in the malls or anywhere else or online. We really high touch. You can drive up to the front of the store. We do everything from when you're acquiring jewelry right through the whole purchase cycle to, selling. When someone needs to sell their pieces, we're there. So everything from the service, watchmaking, jewelry repair, but it really starts with diamonds and bridal. That's how we start off our relationships. And those are hopefully lifelong if we do our job right.
I was doing a little bit of last minute research, Googling jewelers in Lighthouse Point, and you came up pretty consistently at the top of the list. Is that because there aren't that many jewelers in Lighthouse Point, or is that because you have the market covered?
Well, in Lighthouse Point, it's a pretty small town sandwiched between Boca and Fort Lauderdale are probably the more known, but we're smack in the middle towards the east side, surrounded by basically almost like a little Venice here with all the canals and boating. And those are really our customers, the people that just love South Florida and live here. And we're happy to be located where we are.
And it's predominantly natural diamonds, right?
Predominantly. We do 99% natural, maybe 98.5%.
When did you move into lab grown?
That We dabbled in lab grown. We started in 2018 and we decided to go into that. It was more of a decision that we made at the time to be basically cutting edge, pay respect to some of the conversations that we're having that were being had around the time as far as responsibility, different things like that. We looked at a company called Diamond Foundry, which kind of ticked all those boxes in the beginning. And they really had a good presentation as far as energy profile, sustainability. Their images were great. They had great marketing campaigns. And really at the time, the diamond prices were only about 30% difference. There was a delta in there. So we were like, well, why not offer something that could be the future? And we always like to try to stay on the leading edge, so to speak. We don't want to be behind. So that was the first step into it. And we learned a lot since then, that's for sure.
Right. One of the interesting things, and maybe the thing that Diamond Foundry is best known for, is being backed by Leonardo DiCaprio, who's maybe not the biggest friend of the natural diamond industry. Did you have to take that fact into account? Was there any concern about that?
Well, it's interesting. I think I viewed it as something that was well-intentioned. And to be perfectly honest, I've done research, especially now. And the fact that like blockchain tracing has come on board, it's just made things a lot more concrete. And it's really shaped what my current vision is. But back then at the time, I was open to hearing both sides of the argument, so to speak. And we just always had wanted to do whatever the right thing was. And obviously we were leaning hard into naturals, but our eyes and our ears were open until that whole story fell apart once we started doing research and the business shifted away from companies like Foundry, and they couldn't supply anymore to what we needed. Everyone started dropping prices. Manufacturing went all overseas. It ended up in China and India. And the whole story from then on kind of fell apart for me compared to when we started trying to carry it. So that really is kind of the timeline in a nutshell.
Has Diamond Foundry basically moved away from diamonds for jewelry now? It's pretty much just in industrial applications?
That's what I believe. I mean, we don't keep up with it that much. And again, it's not really a focus of our business now. Back then, what we found was they couldn't consistently supply the further we got into it, kind of what we needed. And then obviously everyone started undercutting on price and the race to the bottom began and it just changed. So what we started out trying to, I guess, dabble in the lab business, the narrative was not what we thought it was in the beginning, and it just kind of shifted along the way, so to speak.
So how do you source those lab-grown stones that make up the 1% of your business?
So we do it through our regular suppliers, again, and a lot of them do come from India at this point. And interesting to learn when you dig in, you find that people have hands on both sides, so to speak. It's very interesting. It's a wild business.
Yeah, sometimes trying to keep that other side quiet. But you describe yourself as being towards the higher end. Where does lab grown fit into that? What's the maximum that a customer will spend on a piece of lab grown jewelry?
So, in lab grown, the reason we still have it in the stores, even though we cater to a very high end, is basically some of these clients back maybe 4 or 5 years ago purchased an engagement ring from us. We sold them the lab diamond. Now they want to get studs or they want to get something else. And I feel like it would kind of be hard to turn around and just say, hey, you were my client. Now you're not. I just don't think that's good business for us. So we don't advertise. We minimize the location in the store so it's not that prevalent. But people still come in and ask for it. And we just want to service what customers we've already had. When you've been doing it for 5, 6 years, the last thing you want to do is say, hey, you're not good enough to shop here, or your money, that's not a big sale for us or whatever. It's just something that we don't want to come across like that. I mean, we're here to serve our customers and we always keep that as the top priority. So to go back as far as what's the high end, people come in and buy 20 karat Riviera diamond lab necklace and tennis bracelets and things like that. And, It's nothing to spend $6,000, $7,000 on a pair of hoops. And it's kind of wild to be like, don't tell anybody. I'm like, of course we were not gonna disclose. It's wild. So even though it's a small part of our business, it's still business, and we want to take care of our customers and not turn them over to the next person.
What sort of margins are you making on lab grown now? I imagine it's smaller than it was, right?
So lab diamonds, we interestingly took the position in the beginning to mark them up not much more than naturals. I know a lot of people are going to just flip out when they hear that, but initially we figured it was a customer grab, a market share grab. And back when the prices were a lot higher, it kind of made sense. That was, let's say if you were going to make between 20 and 30% on a natural or a loose stone or whatever it is, or the bigger they get, that smaller it gets, you're going down even 10% or whatever. But on a lab, say we were making 50% or 60% or whatever that number was, it wasn't ever 300% or 500% or some of these crazy things that people held to when the market dropped. I know one of the things we talked about before was consignment. I actually have my buyers looking at it now to make sure that, again, even at that 1% level of what we carry in labs, that we're not bringing it in on too high of a price. Because at the end of the day, like you said, it's just the price has dropped. A lot of people look at it as a margin play. We looked at it as a customer acquisition play.
Are you seeing the shift back from lab grown to natural in bridal that is often spoken about at the moment?
I see naturals pretty strong. Some things have happened that are pretty interesting recently. I've seen a lot of talk about some of the smaller diamonds, people coming back in and looking at the 1.5s or the sort of the bread and butter. We just introduced a solitaire program to cover those bases with blockchain trace diamonds. And, that story seems to be resonating, and that's where we're headed as a company. And what I believe is the future of the industry as the prices continue to drop on labs. At some point we have to look and say, hey, this starts costing you $100 a carat or whatever it is. Do you want to be making $600, $500 sales in your store as far as an engagement ring, or do you want to try to be back at 3, 5, 7, 10, 15,000? I think that seems like a no-brainer to me.
All right. I'm going to ask you more about that origin traceability story in due course, but I think the biggest thing going on at the moment is obviously the tariffs. We're recording this on the 9th of September, so who knows what will have happened by the time we publish it. But as it stands, there's still 50% tariffs in place on Indian goods. Diamonds have just been added to a list of possible exemptions down the road for countries that agree to trade deals with the US, but still a few steps that have to be taken for that to actually happen. How have the tariffs affected you and particularly consumer demand so far?
So most of our jewelry is not coming out of India. I would say that tariffs have been, as of right now, not a huge factor in the business. Everyone's waiting for that to work its way into the supply chain more and more, because I think a lot of the suppliers are still utilizing what they have here in the US. So one of the first things we started getting like a delay in some of the pieces we were trying to acquire there. Again, it's something that we're working with again, but even out of Botswana, right now, we're trying to purchase from a local manufacturer there. And once we factor in the tariffs, it's kind of like everything works out perfect. And then you get to the tariff and you're like, it's like you wish it wasn't there, because it would just be so much easier. So we're hoping that goes away. But I definitely see it affecting ideally where we would like to purchase from. It definitely can have an effect compared to the older goods that are sitting here in somebody's inventory. It puts you at a disadvantage if you want to tell a story, let's say, of a diamond that's cut in Botswana.
Where are most of your diamonds and jewelry sourced from?
So a lot of them are manufactured here in the United States. I'm sure, a lot of the diamonds that the companies are connected to different cutting centers, but the actual manufacturing in terms of the blanks and tennis bracelets, the Rivieras, those things are put together here in the States. And a lot of things that we source are, for example, Roberto coins from Italy, Marco Biccigo. A lot of the brands that we carry, we do import from Europe. that number is kind of an easy thing to work around. Not saying that the price increase is good or great or anything like that, but it's kind of set when you have a brand that has a suggested retail. You just take the price increase and move on. And really, it becomes a matter then of when the customer says enough, it gets too high or whatever. But I also think the price of gold is equally as difficult of a challenge right now. So we do have that price increase hitting from two different angles, especially in the higher end with gold. But it seems, oddly enough, my business in most of these categories is holding very strong. It seems like the stronger the brand is, the less it's impacting. That's what I can see from where we're importing from right now.
Right. But just to clarify, the diamonds that are in a lot of that diamond jewelry, most of it would have come from India, right? Or maybe pre-tariff. They're pre-tariff diamonds. Is that why it hasn't affected you much yet?
I believe so. Yeah, I think that's a very accurate statement. 90% of diamonds, I think it is polished, maybe the stat, are coming from India. So that ties right in. And if that supply goes down to nothing, certainly it will be affected. Now, you hear all these different things that people are trying to move through Mexico and different stuff like this. It's very interesting to see how all that's going to get sorted out and whether that's successful or people are going to end up with a lot of trouble on their hands. Who knows?
Right. And you haven't seen any impact yet on the consumer demand? I mean, consumers not feeling that their cost of living has gone up as a result of the tariffs?
I think we see it in some of the smaller purchases for a while there. We were seeing our transaction counts kind of waffling a little bit. But ironically, we countered Peter Smith on LinkedIn, did a post about the edge retailers that they said in August that the transactions were down 7%. So immediately, of course, what I did is went and looked at my numbers. And August was good for us. But also we have a new store. So I'm not really sure what to attribute it to. But we were basically in transaction counts on the positive side at that same number.
Right. One of the trends that I've heard from a few wholesalers is that if you divide the retail jeweler market into three categories, the majors, the large independents, and the small independents, the best performing category at the moment is the large independents. The majors are buying quite cautiously, using a lot of lab grown, and the small independents are just not able to sell as efficiently. They just don't have the economies of scale that the large independents have. Do you see that trend yourself? I mean, I guess you're small independent, but quite high end. So maybe you don't fit into any of those categories easily. But do you agree with that trend?
Yeah. I mean, as far as an independent goes, we do a pretty good business. We're buying well. In my end of the business, I see that tennis bracelets, diamond Rivieras, things like that are through the roof. As far as sales goes, I'm having big increases. Don't ask me why. It's a bread and butter item. Color gemstones, the same. It's been very interesting there as far as what the affluent people are heading towards. I think that they like being able to purchase something that's unique, that has a story behind it. And I think that that's really what it takes nowadays for people to be successful in sparking demand. You can't just go at it the way we've been going at it for years and talking about, oh, this one buys direct, I have the lowest price, this, that, and whatever. I don't think that's really effective or moves the needle as much right now because there is so much noise on that front. I mean, I think it just gets lost in the shuffle. So if you have something unique, a story, basically something that you believe in, you're passionate about, that's what's moving the needle for us as high-end independents. That's what I believe. And that's where our focus is, to just be there offering something different that has a good story behind it, something that we feel positively about, and people know authenticity when they see it. And that's really what we're trying to hone in on.
Is the gemstone thing also a price point factor? It's just cheaper per carat than diamonds?
Not at all. On our end, the things we're selling in gemstones are actually to people that probably have a large diamond. They might have a 10 carat. They have 6 or 8 carat total weight diamond studs. They have a 15 carat, 20 carat tennis bracelet already, the Diamond Riviera, and it's a big occasion. And all of a sudden you can show them a Ceylon sapphire, or you show them, a beautiful dark rich green Zambian emerald or a ruby from Madagascar, and it just knocks their socks off, because once you start showing things like that, it sparks imagination. And our sales associates basically to start, show them something interesting, make their day, like put something on that they haven't tried before. So that's where we're seeing success.
It's the way that you source gemstones. I mean, how does it differ from how you source your diamonds?
Well, gemstones are very different than diamonds because they come from, or will source from, different manufacturers. For example, we have a beautiful ring from Italy from a company, Bussati, and it's gorgeous. It's got blue chalcedony on the sides and a beautiful Sri Lankan sapphire in the center. So we purchased it direct from them, and there's a colored gemstone from Italy. Prior to that, we have connections in Thailand that have wonderful sapphires and rubies, and they make beautiful finished jewelry in Thailand. Some of the finest I think I've seen in the world. And that's somewhere where we're sourcing colored gemstones a little different, so it varies. And also in the US too. I mean, we have suppliers here in the US.
Going back to diamonds, how much of the diamonds that you get do you source on memo, and how much do you buy outright for inventory?
So for inventory, we're kind of focused in on probably 5 carats and down. Not to say we don't have the odd larger stone, but we do purchase, if we fall in love with a big 10 carat, an 8 carat, whatever, we'll buy it. But in those sizes, we certainly have supplemental inventory on consignment. I would say a lot of the bigger diamonds are rotated in and rotated out of the store.
Right, so in the types of diamonds that are most in demand at the moment, so the 2-3 carat rounds and fancies, you're mostly buying them outright? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think we're buying certain ones outright. For example, we'll purchase right now, if we get the right diamond that has, for example, it's through Tracer, it's coming from Botswana, I'm buying obviously those diamonds because they almost feel, it's odd to say when you're talking about a billions a year old product, they almost feel new. It's like exciting, it's fresh, because you want to be able to tell that story. And you can't rely on people to memo those type of diamonds to you long term, because a lot of them, are going to be in very high demand. My prediction is, again, that blockchain trace diamonds are the standard. I know that G7 date keeps getting pushed back, but I'm not sure jewelers really totally have wrapped their head around it, because it's hard. I mean, how many iterations of branding and strategies have we gone through with diamonds that didn't work? But I truly believe this is here to stay. I mean, you saw what I said about the colored gemstones earlier. I named every place of origin that they came from, because to me, that's part of the story. It tells something about what that piece is about. And I think that's what diamonds need. And I think that's what diamonds have been missing, a cohesive message, something to rally around. There's no argument there that anyone could possibly make that tracing is not a good thing. And it's great to know where the products come from, especially when it tells a story like Botswana. You have a great story to surround the diamond with. So back to your question, if you want to get perfectly made diamonds from Botswana in the right sizes, if they're elongated ovals or radiants or antique cushions or whatever comes across your plate, you're buying them, And so that might not make up all of my inventory, but when I see something that stands out, I'm grabbing it.
Do consumers come into the store and ask unprompted where a diamond or a gemstone is from?
No, they don't. And that's something we've been experimenting with probably for the last 6 months. We started putting little 3x5 cards in the showcase with a QR code where you can pull up the blockchain record. We also display our diamonds next to a model of the rough, like a resin model of what the rough was, what the rough crystal was. And, it's all sitting there in the showcases. We also are advertising it on the radio. So we've gone through a couple of different iterations of this process along the way. And the one thing that we've learned from it is you don't really have to over inform or overwhelm people with the information. Just by showing them that it's there, we found that it builds confidence in whatever that is as far as our sourcing. And people will look at it, they find it interesting. There's some people where the story will really, really resonate with. And there's other people you'll show it to and they'll say, that's neat and that's great. And then you go over to a diamond, let's say, that doesn't fit that certain criteria. It doesn't, it's something that was traded into me, or an estate diamond that's spready and it happens to be a good deal. And maybe that's the right diamond for them. But I think overall, it just puts a halo around what you do as a company, because it shows that you care about your sourcing. And, the hopes, I'm sure, from the consumer, without them specifically saying it, is, hey, this guy is looking at where his products come from, what potential good or purpose that it has. And, hopefully that means he's sourcing the rest of his products that way. So I like this place. That's kind of like where we're at now. But the thing we can't forget as jewelers, it's really about the romance. It's about the couple. It's about the people standing in front of you. It's about the benefit to them. And really, at the end of the day, you have to make sure that that always remains the focus, and the story should kind of augment that. And that can't be something that overwhelms the moment, So they love hearing the stories. It's all part of the process. But at the end of the day, they want a beautiful diamond. They want something to symbolize their union together. And we do believe that some people, and hopefully more and more as it gets more popular and mainstream and the norm, will totally want to know where their diamonds come from. That's the goal, and that they support the people that are doing the right thing and the value chain along the way where it benefits people. That part of it's about the human stories, and it should resonate with a lot of people.
What do you say in that radio ad? Is it specifically a radio ad about the Origin program?
Well, not about Origin, because that Origin program doesn't kick off till Q4. But we started talking very technically in the beginning about blockchain traced, about, seeing the rough in its rough form and how it's an immutable chain and those sort of things. And it was great, and it piqued some interest. And then we modified it and started talking about the schools that, are built in Botswana, the healthcare, the infrastructure, and things like that. We got a lot of positive feedback from that, but it still felt like we were missing something. So then we basically, you have 60 seconds to talk about it. So we realized the technical part is probably the least important part about that. So now it's about taking that human story and really wrapping it with romance and what it means to the couple, and how special she feels when that ring on her finger, it has a good story to it. It's different. It's not something that everyone can say, and she can be proud of that. So those are things where we're really trying to zero in on a differentiator. But at the end of the day, we're really moving from technical to probably focusing on origin, and now back to romance. And those are the side stories that kind of, not the main story. The main character is still the man and the woman that fall in love. And we can't forget that moment. That's the most powerful moment. But when you wrap that with the rest, it makes a complete story that we're in love with at JR Dunn.
So we had a previous guest. You actually contacted me after that podcast with Megan Crabtree, where
Yes.
she highlighted some of the potential risks with traceability, that if some diamonds have confirmed origin, then that potentially damages demand for the diamonds that don't have origin, or at least raises questions about them. And you, if I remember correctly, you disagreed with this.
Yes. And by the way, I think she was a fabulous guest. I have been following her, and I appreciate you doing that podcast, because I love what she reads. She's a sharp lady and very impressive. But that one point that she made kind of perked my ears up, because I'd been doing 5-6 months worth of advertising already. So I have experience with it. And people don't get fixated on one country or another. That's what I learned in this process. Nobody says, well, I only want a diamond from Botswana. And I think that's something that I found different than when we were trying to do branded diamonds before. Because when we sold somebody, let's say a tycoon cut diamond was one of the brands that we used to carry. we would tell them how much more light it returned and how much this and how much better it was than a traditional emerald cut or step cut. People would get fixated on that and always felt that they were taking a step backwards when they didn't get that. Like, you would sell them on that. There would be very limited rough to be able to cut those specific shapes, sizes, whatever. But with traceable diamonds, there's a lot out there. There's a lot more than one would think because they're coming from multiple different suppliers. It's not just De Beers. You have a ton of people doing origin right now. And it's just still hard to find who and what and all those different things. I remember not that long ago, I'd go on RapNet and try to click who has tracer stones. And maybe it's working now, but months and months ago, it was hard to find out. So, you have Serene doing it, iTrace, Tracer. There's a lot of goods out there. So if somebody wants a blockchain trace diamond, they're not going to specifically say, I want it from Botswana or Namibia. Of course, you're going to have an odd case. If somebody has a connection that went there, maybe they went on safari there or something like that and said it would be cool if, but the general population coming in does not zero in and only accept one country.
Sean, I'm not sure we've done the introduction to what exactly the Origin program is that you've been working with De Beers on. Maybe you could give us the elevator picture on that.
Sure. I'll see if I can dance around what I'm supposed to be able to say or not say since it's confidential. It hasn't launched yet. But basically, Origin is a program from De Beers that zeroes in a specific platform to where you can see a ton of information on the diamond. It's very thorough. It gives you the ultimate assurance that the diamond has been ethically sourced. Diamonds from Botswana, they've never been involved with conflict ever, 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 and they've never had conflict. So what we're buying now in the Origin program is diamonds from Botswana, and it's a great program. I'm proud to be representing it. I think it's going to be a luxury offering, so to speak. It's going to cater to the larger diamonds, and it's limited to what I can say, but we're ecstatic to be part of it.
And what can you tell me about the work you've been doing with Zoe Diamonds?
So this is incredible. This brings a smile to my face because once I found out about Tracer and blockchain diamonds, it really kind of lit a passion for me, something that I had actually done since 2008, 2009. I've had interest in beneficiation. 2008, 2009, I used to buy Namibian diamonds from Leo Schachter way back in the day. And we created a brand at the time that we called Precious Earth. We got recycled gold from Hoover and Strong. And we did these pieces that a lot of them had a theme of Africa in them. And we would set them with Namibian diamonds. Well, long story short, the financial crisis came along and my passion project ended up getting sidelined to make sure that we could survive and stay in business. So fast forward to about 8 months ago, we learned about tracer diamonds. And I said, oh my God, I'm like, this just basically rekindled everything that I wanted to do back in 2008 or whenever it was, 2007. And that fire just exploded inside of me because basically what I found was this is what I always hoped to be able to represent, but there was never still proof back then. It was a laser inscription on the girdle. It would come with a card, but it's like, how do you really know? We were relying obviously on the good reputation of the company. They were doing the Leo diamond, huge site holders. That's how our business works, right? On a handshake. So we trust each other. But really, when you're bringing something and putting your whole reputation on the line, when I heard blockchain and I was like, wow, I'm like, this is it. This is proof for me to be able to support something that's bigger than just selling a diamond. You're watching this money go back into education. You're watching it go back into healthcare, infrastructure, things like that. So at the beginning of that, I started making some posts on LinkedIn, doing my own research. And really what I was finding, this is where the kind of me and the lab diamond thing really split. And I really took sides, so to speak, because the more research that I did on both of these subjects, as far as sustainability and what's good, what's, the right thing, it became clear to me that the most important thing to me, at least, was people and the human stories. And those are what resonated. And it led me to have some interesting conversations with people in Botswana. I started going on LinkedIn. I got messaged first through LinkedIn, but then I went on Reddit. I posted in a Botswana forum there and said, okay, people of Botswana, tell me from your own words, like, what do diamonds mean to you? How important is it to your economy? So once I started getting the feedback there, nobody said anything negative, other than obviously diversifying. They need to diversify, not solely rely on diamonds. But the feedback that I got was so incredibly positive, it blew me away. And that really is what started my passion. And I started communicating on every social media platform I could, but I started communicating with Adathella from Zoe Diamonds. And I started researching her story. And it blew me away, you know, how she got started from winning a young entrepreneurial award and opportunity there in Botswana to start her own business. And basically, she's hired employees and cutting in her factory diamonds that are coming from the mine there in Botswana. And I just thought it was very full circle and tied in exactly to what I envisioned the best story of a diamond that could be, which is basically a young female entrepreneur having the opportunity created by natural diamonds to be able to go out on her own, create a business, and then have people like me take notice and hopefully spread the word to other people to say, hey, you want to tell a story around diamonds? Here's the best story you're ever going to find around diamonds. You know, you're supporting something that I think would resonate with everybody. And for me to be able to get that story out for Zoe Diamonds, it's paving the way for others to follow in her footsteps. And I connected with her, and we're working on our first package, so to speak. And we're going to bring that into JR Dunn under what is our single source program right now that basically is just what it says. It's diamonds from a single origin that are blockchain traced. And we're excited to work with her. I mean, talk about terrific stories. She's got one.
To clarify, how does this relate to the origin program and tracer? Or these two different things?
So they're separate. Yeah, because she's not under the De Beers umbrella, you know, so she's independent basically. From what I understand, again, I'm not truly an expert on the subject, but what I understand is a certain portion of the rough is available to the locals coming from the mines through Botswana, which is a joint venture between Botswana and De Beers. So she's able to go to the tenders, buy the rough, and manufacture, which is cool because that's her country. She should be able to do that. And it's just full circle. So hopefully one day jewelry will be made there and things can be built around that whole value chain. That's really what I'd love to see because jewelry should represent relationships, beautiful things. And that's a beautiful story. So I think it ties perfect.
She buys the rough from ODC, from Okavango Diamond Company, or is it nothing to do with that?
I believe so. I'm following along. This is relatively new to me, to be honest, to buy this way. I mean, I've never purchased in this fashion before. We have an estimate on what the cost would be and all this stuff, but it's not a traditional way for a jeweler to be purchasing. But again, much in the same way that I might have, you know, dipped my toe into lab diamonds to try to see what it is. I guess I'm adventurous, so I'm ready to go. You know, you give me a good story and I'll follow it.
On the topic of Botswana and popular opinion, is there a danger now that some bad headlines are coming out of Botswana, that consumers could wrongly assume that the diamond industry is at fault, as in stories that Botswana is running out of medicines and medical supplies and things like this, which is actually because of the weakness of the diamond industry and because of the competition from lab grown. But consumers might not put two and two together, might just think that the industry has forsaken Botswana.
That is such a great point because I never thought of it that way because I read about it, right? So I know why that happened. And we know that's because of the weakness brought on the economy because they are so reliant on natural diamonds. But that's what makes it all the more important that we get this story out, right? And I wish that the press, and really I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to come here and speak about it because what I find totally disheartening is that press never tells these stories or the positive. I'm talking about mainstream press. They never tell us positive stories about natural diamonds. A lot of the information that people get, unfortunately, in the public is so skewed. And I don't know why that is. I mean, I guess we just haven't done our job in the natural diamond business to get this out there. So I really appreciate this opportunity that you've given me to be able to talk about it.
I'm afraid it's probably as simple as bad news is good news. As my old colleague and friend Avi Kravitz once pointed out, that natural diamonds are dog bites man, and lab-grown diamonds are man bites dog.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that. That's the best. But it's so true. I mean, it's amazing because a lot of the things that I'm focused on right now, I'm like, why? I'm like, are there no documentaries or a positive one? Like, hopefully, Adathella is the subject of a positive documentary one day of what's possible and providing inspiration to people, and why, always put a target on the back of De Beers. And even though that obviously the history wasn't perfect, everybody recognizes that and acknowledges that at this point. It's what they're doing today, and going forward. And when you basically put a target on the back of the leader in the industry, you have no leader. You're creating a vacuum. And that's what I think our industry needs, is more leaders to be able to step up, to unify, to say, hey, this is what we have to do. And if you're sitting here in this business and you're going to take out or take a shot at De Beers, come with another answer. You really need leadership, and they're the ones who are providing it. And really, if you look at their record, they're building forever and what they're doing with their sustainability initiatives. I don't even think that's out there. I don't think press finds it. Nobody looks, nobody cares. It's just more fun for the NGOs to target them than the lab companies who are putting it's ethical on their front page of their website and have zero backup for it. I mean, where's the outrage? What's exactly going on there? It's so bizarre to me.
Just before we finish, as a relatively small jewelry company with just one store, do you find that makes it difficult for other parties to take an interest in partnering with you on these origin programs, given that it offers them relatively small scale?
That is a great question. I think one of the things that you'll find that really makes Origin different is when we sat in that room with Al Cook and the seniors from De Beers. We recently had a meeting in New York about Origin. They wanted to hear what we had to say. They were there listening to the retailer. And so you had collectively some of the largest independent retailers in the room that day. The volume in that room would be equivalent to a Tiffany or a bigger company or a Cartier or whatever, who knows. So, collectively together, we're strong. So I think that's what independents have to remember. And it's unity and voice and a common message that we have to rally around. And that's what's different about Origin. And that's what's different about what's coming down the pike. Like you said, is it hard to source or do things like how I'm doing it right now? It took me a long time to get here. It took me to show that I had passion for it. But no matter how big of a retailer that you are, there is strength in numbers. And once we all focus around a positive message surrounding natural diamonds, that's huge. I mean, it's collectively just powerful. And the whole value chain, from having the leadership of De Beers doing what they're doing with Origin, shining the light on supply, it all started with Tracer. It's going to allow for so many different stories to be told with diamonds. It's just beginning. You have Serene, you have iTrace, you have opportunities for all of these other site holders and manufacturers to create their own story around diamonds and to create their own story of beneficiation, to shape a country like Angola that's coming online now with their first finds of kimberlite there. I mean, really, the idea is to turn other countries towards a model like Botswana, at least to have some of that success, but obviously understanding that they need to diversify too, right? Because diamonds are a finite resource. But at the end of the day, a collective, unified, positive message is what we need right now.
Have you considered opening more stores, expanding to other cities?
Not right now. I don't know if I'll ever see that in my future. I've got my hands full, but I have kids coming into the business. So if they want to, obviously that's going to be something that they'll have to work on with me. But at least let's put it this way. I've been under construction for the past 3 years. I can't wait to take a break from construction. So I don't know. Maybe it'll be like the ladies say about when they have a baby, they forget what it's like and go have another one a year later or 2 or another 3 or whatever.
How much is the construction you talk about? By what percentage does that increase the size of your store?
Yeah, so we're at about a 14,000 square footprint right now. It's pretty magnificent. It's exciting. It's when you see it on paper, you don't realize the size of it. So when I walk in every day, I can't believe it. Sometimes I'm in disbelief. I'm like, wow, we did it. My dad was always the one back in the day who led all these sort of projects. And right at the beginning of it, unfortunately, he passed. So I got handed the baton. And this has been an exhilarating project and a big learning experience for me.
Well, Sean, on that note, I very much enjoyed hearing your stories and your insights. I've particularly enjoyed talking about the origin story with you, and Botswana traceability, certainly an important topic to focus on. So I'm very grateful, Sean, that you've joined us on this podcast.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. You too.